What's up guys, and welcome to Kim Dave. In this video I'm going to be sharing how to make a two-piece sleeve pattern. I went ahead to create a little sample using the pattern just to check that everything works and I'm happy with the outcome. In this video I went ahead to work from a basic sleeve block to create my two-piece sleeve, and the amazing thing about two-piece sleeve is that it's bent towards the front of the garment or towards the front of the wearer, which means that you have more mobility moving your arm up and down when you have this type of sleeve on a garment. It's usually very common on like coats, blazer jackets, and suiting, generally more tailored garments usually have two-piece sleeve and would sometimes actually have a shoulder pad on top of the sleeve. So if you'd like to see how I made this pattern, make sure to keep on watching, subscribe and join DIY fam if you haven't already, as well as turn on that notification bell so you know whenever I have new videos on the channel every single week. So let's go ahead and get started. I will list the materials that I'm going to work with as the tutorial progresses, so don't worry, I've listed everything I use. So you just need to take down your note, your pen, and jot down the steps if you want to recreate this tutorial yourself. I'm going to link down materials that helped me create this video, so tutorials, books that without them I wouldn't have actually made this video possible. So if this video doesn't really hit home for you, you can go ahead and watch those sort of reference materials in the description box down below. So let's go ahead and get started. To create my two-sleeve pattern, I'm going to be using the following tools. The first is my pattern master and second is my set square. I also have my paper scissors to cut out my pattern paper. I also have my marker pen to draw nice clear lines, as well as my tape measure to just double check measurements as I go along. So you'll also be needing your basic sleeve block. This can be from a pattern you've already done before. You can get an already made pattern bought in shops or printable versions online, but you need a basic sleeve block to work with. I also got myself 1/2 meter of calico fabric to make a sample to test out my patterns later on. I also have my pattern paper, which I'm going to be using to create my new two-sleeve patterns. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you need to do is obviously lay down your main sleeve block. I'm going to then fold along both sides of the sleeve like so, folding in such a way that the side seam or the side edges meet the very midline of the sleeve. Thankfully this pattern already had like a grain line going through that middle point, so I'm just folding to meet that midpoint. So once you folded both edges for the front and for the back sides, I'm going to grab some sellotape and just tape this down so it doesn't move around when I go ahead to transfer this later on. So I'm just going to check my measurement. It's ended up being 3.5 inches on both sides, totaling 7 inches for the sleeve width. So next up, I got myself some fresh pattern paper and I'm just layering my taped down sleeve block underneath like so. And we're going to be tracing off the hem, the folded edge, as well as that inner and outer curve of your sleeve, because from this traced off pattern here, we're going to be making our plan for our two-piece sleeve. Don't forget to also trace that midline because that's going to become your grain line later on in this video. So using the curved ends of my pattern, I'm just tracing out that inner curve or the underarm curve of the sleeve like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and trace the top curve, which normally sits on the top or the shoulder area of your garment on your sleeve. So once that is done, don't forget to transfer your notches so you actually know what side is the front and what side is the back. And this is very, very important when it actually comes to making the main two-piece sleeve. So I'm just going ahead to transfer this notch from my main pattern itself, and I'm just taping down my plan like so. The next thing you need to do is you need to measure the distance from your shoulder point to your elbow. Mine ended up being 15 inches. I suggest you measure yourself or your client or whoever you're making this pattern for the best outcome. So I'm just marking that 15 inches point because from that elbow point, we're going to be bending the sleeve towards the front. So I'm bending by 1 inch. I'm marking 1 inch along the hem on the front side, and I'm connecting it back to my elbow point. And from this onwards towards the front, we're going to be creating the new hemline and the new side seam of our 2-piece sleeve. Next up, we're going to draw in the new hemline that tilts towards this direction like so. So using my set square, I am aligning that midline of my set square to the bent line that we just drew, and I marked the actual width of my sleeve, which is 7 inches in total, 3.5 on both sides. And I'm just marking that elbow point on both fold edges of fold sides of my folded sleeve plan. I'm connecting those elbow points back to the new hemline, and this should sort of give you an idea of the pattern coming together slowly. So now that we have the pattern bent in the direction, you can bend this thing as much as you want to. Just remember, the more you bend it, the more you have to ease pieces together when you sew. So next up, I'm drawing in my seam line, which is 0.6 inches from the sleeve fold edge, and this seam line is going to divide our plan into the upper and the under sleeve. So I'm just using my curved end to smoothing out the angled points or the directional bend from that elbow area, and I'm just drawing in the last of the seam line for this back side. So now that we've done this, the inner line area or the inner area of this with only that underarm curve is going to become your under sleeve, and the rest is going to become your upper sleeve. So I just got myself some fresh pattern paper and I'm tracing off the under sleeve. Remember to trace that inner line that we just drew, which is your seam line. Remember to draw in your grain line, add your notches, and just draw in any other curved lines that you'll be needing. You can go ahead and add your seam allowance to this traced off piece as well, because this is going to become your under sleeve, which will be attached to the top sleeve to make your 2-piece sleeve. You need to cut 2 pieces of this, one for the left and one for the right hand side. So this is what the under sleeve looks like. I added a 1 centimeter seam allowance around. I left those top edges open for now because I want to square them off, and the hem allowance is 2 centimeters. So now we can go ahead and trace off our upper sleeve. But to do this, you would need to fold along that sleeve edge and trace off that seam line on the other side of your pattern paper. Because the seam line is inside of the fold line, you want to bring out that folded or that 0.6 inches to the outside so you can actually stitch it back onto your garment. I'm just going in here to trace off this side of the line, and when you get to the bottom end, you fold along that bent line that you drew and not the original straight line of your basic sleeve block. So using my pattern master and my marker pen, I'm just tracing off those lines like so, and I'm going to use the curved end of my pattern master to connect the lines like so. So by doing this, you've moved that 0.6 inches outside of that fold edge, and this is going to allow you to join it appropriately to the under sleeve. So I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the same thing on the other side, folding along the fold edge on that straight side, and then when we get to the bottom, we fold along the bent line and trace it off so we have that area ready for seam allowance to be added and to be stitched onto the under sleeve. So I'm just folding this bottom area like so, connecting my lines where necessary, and then I'm going to go ahead and trace off this upper sleeve onto fresh pattern paper. So this is what my upper sleeve looks like. Is looking really good. So far so good. I'm going to get myself some fresh pattern paper and we're going to trace this off so we don't get very confused with the numerous lines. So now I'm going to trace off the entire hem line from that point to the other, and then we're going to trace off that new line that we got by folding and tracing. I'm going to trace off the top sleeve alone and not that underarm curve, because the top sleeve usually has that rounded edge on the top, but it doesn't have that curved underarm area. Don't forget to add your notches, your grain line, as well as annotations stating how many pieces you will need. So after that, I went ahead to add my 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around and 2 centimeter seam allowance along the hem. So this is what my top sleeve looks like. I'm just going to grab my under sleeve and finish off the ends on the top like this because I want to square it off. So something I would say is, remember, if you are doing this, square off this edge like this, because when you have pointed ends, it's hard to match them along the seam when you're actually sewing. And something I didn't do that I think you should do is actually square off the edges of the upper sleeve as well, so they actually match along the side seam. So this is what my sleeve patterns look like so far. I'm going to go ahead and add notches on both patterns so sewing is a lot easier for me. And starting from this top edge, I'm going to mark 7 inches down for my top notch. And so I'm not confused, I'm going to put 2 notches on the side that is for the back and 1 notch for the side that is the front. On this other side, I'm going to mark as well and draw in my points. Because that's the front, I'm going to draw in only 1 notch. And for the bottom notch, I marked 5 inches up from the bottom, draw in the point, and repeat the same on the other side. Doing this from the top and from the bottom is going to ensure that the sleeves actually fit along the seams on the front and on the back. The thing with this pattern is the top and the underarm sleeve patterns are not exactly the same measurement because they are both curved lines. So one curve was bigger than the other. So for the back side, the upper sleeve is slightly longer compared to the under sleeve, and it's the reverse case for the front. So the under sleeve is longer while the upper sleeve is shorter. So this you would actually be able to ease into each other when you're sewing, and that's why using wool fabrics and suiting will be a lot easier to do because you can easily stretch both seams to fit together when it's time to sew. So I went ahead to cut out a sample using my calico fabric. I cut my notches as well, so I know exactly what points that I need to ease into each other. So when you get to those points where you know one particular curve is longer than the other, you just pull slightly to ensure that they meet, and then you sew up until the end, not forgetting to do your back stitch. I repeated this for the front and for the back, gave it a nice press, and this is what my sleeve looks like. If you want to make your sleeve hem more fitted and more tapered to your wrist, remember to adjust that when you make your patterns. But this is what the sleeve sample looks like. You can see the seam on the front and on the back as well, and that dividing seam is what actually makes it a 2-piece sleeve, and you can see how it just naturally falls and bends to the front because of the nature of the pattern. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, let me know your comments, thoughts and ideas down below, and until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.